Assistant Professor Burza Yaşar from TED University will be sharing a new tool, Access to Finance Decision Tree for social entrepreneurs, which focuses on the financing strategies and diverse financing options of social enterprises. After that, we will have Dalia Silberstein, Director of Esade Center for Social Impact. And in this session, we will explore how organizations can shift from simply proving impact to actively improving practice through effective impact measurement and management. And she will draw insights from the Social Exchange project as well as her ongoing work to introduce new learnings on these frameworks. And after that, we will have from ESSEC Business School, Elise Leclerc, the funding director. And in this session, we will explore some societal key performance indicators of organizations that are in the process of sustainable transformation. And we will explore new KPIs, indicators and KPIs, building on impact measurement and performance management theories. So the session will shed light on our way of understanding of the impact of these organizations. Finally, we can consider this also as a wrap-up. We will launch the handbook for social enterprises and entrepreneur support organizations when it comes to navigating impact measurement and management. And this session will be delivered by Merve Nurokutan and Cecil Ney from Impact Hub. And they will be presenting the handbook, which includes, which is like a first edition of practical research-based course that builds upon the research that has been conducted as part of the project. So that's our content, and I will stop sharing now. Again, I want to make the announcement for translation in Turkish for those who will listen in Turkish. Merhabalar tekrardan. Aşağıdaki tercüme bölümünden Türkçe dinlemek isteyenler Turkish seçerek Türkçe dinleyebilirler. Yes, now we now want to move to our keynote session and start our program. And we will start our keynote with Professor Gorge Körlev, Associate Dean and Board Member of ESCP Business School. Hello, dear Professor Gorge. Very nice to see you with us, and we look forward to your keynote speech. And thanks for joining, accepting our invitation to open up the second day of the IMM Summit.
Of course, it's a huge pleasure. Thanks a lot, Semi, Burze, and Sinem, especially for this invitation. I'm super happy to be here. I'll be sharing in a moment the slides, hopefully finding the right window. We tested it out earlier. That was a bit complicated, but we'll get there. I'm super happy and glad to see the program, and I hope the talk, Semi, you put a lot of pressure on me. You said it's going to be very inspirational. So let's see about that. But what it definitely tries to do is connect the different areas, the public sector in a way, impact measurement practices, but also, a more systemic perspective on social entrepreneurship and investing for impact in a way. So now let me try to share my screen and find the right one, hopefully, so that we can see. So that we can also navigate the slides. Semi, you will tell me whether they move when I move them.
Yes, sure.
Do you see them moving?
Not yet. Currently, we see the document, but not the full screen.
Okay, so try again. Yeah, I think that should do it. Okay. The second screen only comes up after the first sharing.
We see it now.
You see it, and now it should also be moving, right?
Yes.
You see the slides moving? Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
yes.
So just that we make sure that, you know, sometimes it happens, people start talking and they navigate and they talk about something else and no one sees it. Okay, so thanks a lot. As I already put into the chat, you know, feel free to gather any types of questions that you might have in the chat. You can either articulate them later or they can be read out. So I'm happy to engage in a discussion and questions as well. So I planned for about half an hour. We're a bit after the time already, but I'll try to stick with that, meaning that the talk will be around 20, maybe 25 minutes, and then we hopefully still have a little bit of time for an exchange. So Burze was asking me to focus on impact investing, and I was you know, contemplating a little bit what to talk about. And I was trying to draw from my current research and pull together this perspective that focuses, as I said, on the public sector, on impact measurement practices, and also finding a more systemic perspective on impact and social entrepreneurial action for impact, basically, as well, of course, by association. And these are what I call 3 new frontiers. So starting off with the first frontier is to move from traditional impact investing, which obviously is already making a step further than ESG investing or responsible investing and all these other types of investing that we know, to a systemic, systems-oriented perspective of investing, where basically you try to capture more of the uncertainty, more of the complexity of social problems and social challenges. You're aiming to transform a system, not necessarily only to relate to, you know, the SDGs and find some kind of SDG metric. So move away from this idea of necessarily performance to really reshaping systems, which brings us back to the idea of entrepreneurship, engaging maybe in institutional entrepreneurship, trying to address the problems at their root causes, not necessarily treat the symptoms, move from single assets, for instance, really focusing on, I don't know, homelessness as an issue, to the lack of social inclusion and marginalization as more of a strategic portfolio. So this is the 4th line that you see. And where you basically really look at not only understanding the systemic nature of problems, but you also move towards a more systemic approach to financing solutions for these types of problems, right? So you somehow see the systemic nature of the challenges that you're addressing, but you're also developing solutions that are more in line with this complexity. Now, I don't want to really go into this you know, whole graph here. I just want to highlight the issue areas. And you see that this is something that emerged in the context of the TransCap initiative, so Trans Capital Systemic Investing Initiative, where we are part of it as ESCP in a working group that is coordinated by the MIT, sitting in Boston, and where, you know, a group of practitioners, but also academics, is thinking about how can we advance research and knowledge on these areas, but also how can we basically make these types of investment happen. So what I just wanted to outline basically is the issue areas where this is pertinent. I already mentioned, you know, issues like poverty, social injustice, but also it relates to obviously also environmental problem areas such as climate vulnerability, not only climate change, right? So you already have the combination of the different issue areas in those problem statements in a way. And essentially, the main message that I want to send basically is it's the most persistent problems. And it's, I think, the ones that you all as a community are already engaged in. So it really makes sense. And in a way, you know, these types of messages and the content that I'm trying to, you know, bring to you is really, you know, made for you and focused on your types of activities in the, you know, in your professional life. Now, meeting questions is on. Okay, good. That was an info box that just came up. And so you see now what it requires here. Again, you know, a lot of content moving from step 1 to step 16. I don't want to go into each of those, but I really want to show you that these are the core ingredients which the TransCap initiative is bringing forward. Has working groups on each of those individual components and how they come together. And what I want to focus on in moving to the second frontier and then the third frontier is really to understand systems, you know, around financing needs, and especially also this element which we often forget when we talk about finance and investing, where we're thinking about money, which is obviously important, financial instruments, but we're not often thinking enough about the orchestration of systems, the orchestration of different kinds of actors, things like capacity building, things like umbrella organizations that have a coordinated function in the field. So I'm going to focus much more on that, and also on public-private community collaboration in making this happen. And then the last point, which is then going to be, I hope, a nice transition into your next discussion topics and points, is really this focus on measurement and trying to use metrics in order to capture what's going on. For some reason, I can't navigate with the arrows, so I'm just going to click here on my other screen. Now, the second frontier, the first frontier in a way, is even to wrap your head around the systemic nature of problems and also to think about systemic solutions. Now, frontier number two, in a way, is this idea of investing collectively. When impact investing is driven very much by, probably you can say the same thing about social entrepreneurial action, is driven by private initiative, and we're trying to establish a critical angle here, right? Not everyone is like this, and it's not like a fundamental critique of the field, but still you see these kinds of problems that emerge in mainstream markets as well, so that you have cherry picking, people engaging with problems, but maybe not with the hardest problems, or they're engaging with the symptom, not necessarily with the root cause of the problem. There is still also, due to funding cycles, in the pre-conversation, we're talking about funding is always an issue, right? And you're trying to gather the resources that you need. So that is often still short-term oriented. So you can't plan for 10, 20 years. You usually plan for 2 or 3, maybe 5. And that can be very challenging, but also narrows down your focus in the activities that you're trying to push. And sometimes this naive idea of, we can always find a win-win-win situation. It's going to be a win for the public sector. It's going to be a win for the private sector and for the communities, evidently, as well. But if we don't actually include all of those actors, it's quite likely that these things are maybe not going to happen. Now, this is a study that we've done, a very practice-oriented study back in 2022. This was before the last German elections, I mean, the ones prior to the very recent ones, where the idea was to collaborate with the German Social Entrepreneurship Network in order to understand what kind of collective initiatives in this public-private community space are there internationally, and how do they differ from, just private investment and impact investing. And so what we found, and what we're trying to showcase with this publication, and by the way, I'm very happy to share those slides, which contain links to those reports, so that you can see all of this and dive more deeply into it. As you see, it's also only a snippet here, where we basically really try to understand not only the financing of types of interventions that have a very clear business model that can be scaled easily, that will also, survive no matter what on the market, but also such that are more in the non-market space, which you see on the top left, and that are more engaged with, maybe the more persistent, the less business-ready kinds of social challenges and problems, to really have a spectrum of different kinds of financial vehicles. But also, as you would see if that had fit on the slide as well, the engagement of different kinds of public actors in relation to actually finding responses that capture the entire, breadth of social innovators, social enterprises, whatever you might call them, impact organizations that there are, instead of focusing in on, the most scalable and the most market-ready ones, right? Where we're basically really trying to see the whole breadth of interventions that would be necessary to get there, instead of, again, cherry picking or focusing in on a particular area of this field. And the good news is, again, I mean, be reminded, this is a graph from, or a snippet of a table from 2022. By now, the Canadian Social Finance Fund has been launched, and in fact, it is 750 million Canadian dollars strong. So really a huge commitment that Canada has made in this area. But you also see that there are some, historical almost examples here, such as in the UK, Big Society Capital at the time, now Better Society Capital, but also Portugal Social Innovation, where you really see these national initiatives that are trying to engage, as I said, public, private, and community actors together instead of only stimulating private engagement and investment in this area. And they seem to be part of like a community or a global, let's say, movement or evolution towards these kinds of new financial systems. You know, you also see the word ecosystem here. You see investment market building. You see an SDG orientation, which are really trying to move beyond the individual connection between impact investors and social entrepreneurs, and are trying to really reshape the landscape that exists here. Now, what's interesting, and this is a more recent analytic step that we've made, although all of them seem to be very much alike, right? They have the same goals, they are connected to a global movement, as I was saying. The Global Steering Group for Impact Investing, GSG Impact, for instance, has a coordinated function. It's a community of practice. They have a lot of exchanges on those ideas and on the practices. But what we find if we dive deeper, so we really use this practice-oriented report, this very impact-oriented report to ground the research even more, is that we see that there are different, let's say, configurations of pursuing a particular purpose, using particular resources, and also having governance structures. And that has very different implications for what these types of initiatives can do relative to the market, right? So we're distinguishing between initiatives that have a more systemic purpose versus a problem-oriented focus, where, you know, it's much more narrow versus wider, which also brings us back to this question of, are you actually trying to somehow revolutionize, reform, address, reshape the system, or are you more targeted? I mean, there's good reasons for doing either, but you see that you can have like a different positioning in relation to that. The second dimension is the resources, what we call market resources. Of course, it's about finance, it's about the financial tools, it's about the ways you channel the money, it's about where the resources come from, but at the same time, it's also about soft measures. It's about knowledge, it's about competencies in impact measurement, for instance. It's about trust, relations, and what we find, what's really interesting is that it also requires the building of new types of relationships, right? And I think these kinds of fora, the summit that you're running at the moment, the inclusion, which I have heard of many public actors yesterday, is crucial, because you need to get the people to the table that are not necessarily inclined to work with it and know everything already and have like the established relations, but instead you want to have relations that are somehow newly formed and that then have a new type of edge in triggering those changes. The last perspective is really governance in relation to whether it's more traditional. Again, there can be benefits to that, more efficiency, for instance, a classical public-private approach where community doesn't necessarily play a role, or where community is only consulted but not included, versus a truly inclusive, assessing new power constellations approach to governance. And you basically see the color schemes, depending on the configuration that you choose. You can either go into scaling the market, essentially, you are much more in this market ready and let's just grow the market kind of mode, let's say. You can try to direct the market, so in a way to address certain market failures, serve particular groups. We see that a lot in the Canadian Social Finance Fund, which is trying to work with Indigenous populations, which has a strong focus on social equity and inclusion. Or you can really go into transforming the market in the sense that you want to build an entire new ecosystem. You want to bring in the municipalities, but you also use European money, the ESF, for instance. So where we see this mostly embodied is in Portugal social innovation, where they're really trying to basically have everything from social impact bonds to like almost like let's say an equity, a venture capital oriented kind of vehicles to, as I said, co-investment by municipalities, but also through the European Social Fund. Now, the question is, what type of constellation do you want to pursue, and what kind of value can that bring? And this last frontier that I want to talk about is, what does measuring impact have to do in relation to this, especially considering that I think all of us in the field, who have been there, know that everyone at least claims to do impact measurement. Probably all somehow do impact measurement, but at the same time, it's a really open secret that the way that impact measurement is done is highly imperfect, right? So it's not as if you just have your business KPIs and you track them and you can really say, you know, performance is going up or down, but we have really and have struggled for years to find meaningful ways of doing this. And there are some deficiencies, but the astonishing thing is everyone knows about it. And somehow we continue to tolerate it, and it's still there, right? And the question is this completely nonsensical? So should we all stop measuring impact? And we were trying in this very recently published article to dive more deeply into what is actually happening. So one observation that we're making first is that there is a difference between how business success is being measured versus impact success is being measured. So you have a lot of dominance of quantitative measures, which you see in the blue bar here, that focus on positive impact performance. You have much fewer very hard indicators in terms of underperformance. So there's not really you know, a way of diving more deeply with quantitative measures into whether you might be failing in achieving the goals that you have. And at the same time, you see still, as I said, you know, a strong dominance of the quantitative, and at the same time, if you compare it to the business performance, you have also a relatively strong share of you know, qualitative ways of dealing with impact, but especially as you see here with underperformance. So in a way, it's like a sense making around why things are not going well, instead of, you know, a more targeted way of, you know, capturing performance as well as underperformance in the field by means of you know, an established set of measures. So you really see that there's a complete difference. I mean, even if you just compare the left side with the right side in terms of how people are engaging with, you know, both quantitative as well as qualitative measures in relation to impact. And what we in fact find, and this is the penultimate slide that I have for you here to then close off with some learnings around what we can do to make impact measurement more meaningful, is that we in fact find a decoupling. The thing is, you know, we don't have like the surprising finding, hey, everyone thinks this is the open secret of the industry and that we have all of those imperfections, but they don't really exist. No. We actually really find this. So there is a decoupling of what you would probably call the ideal functions of impact measurement, right? So that you're tracking goal achievement, you have specific goals, you have standardization, you have a benchmarking, which is very much in the tradition of performance measurement. Instead, we have a much more, you know, the actual functions are much more focused on the relations between fund managers, so impact investors, and the impact owners and the impact fund managers. So it's really more about understanding what your joint goals even are, to really see whether you're moving into the right direction or not, and also to use an openness surrounding goals and discussions in terms of, you know, what do we actually want to achieve and where should we be moving, right? So it's a much more relational role that impact measurement has at the moment. But the twist that we're bringing in is we don't necessarily see this as a problem. I think it's just a symptom of where the field stands. And I think we just need more patience. Things are not just going to fall from the sky and all of a sudden we have the secret formula of how to track everything in quantitative terms, or how to also appreciate, you know, underperformance in quantitative terms. But this is really a process of sense making, and it would be really dangerous for people to draw the conclusion, hey, we're just going to abandon this because everyone knows it's imperfect anyway, so let's just stop doing it. No, we really encourage people in the field to continue doing it, especially because we say, you know, over time, there's hopefully, and I'm going to go into 4 strategies in a moment, ways of recoupling, you know, this more relational function, the sense making, and even making impact and your impact direction, your impact goals, or your impact progress a topic between those that are involved. Obviously, it could also include, you know, the social entrepreneurs or the managers of the impact organizations that are being invested in, which were not at the focus of our investigation, but the argument can be made in a similar way. So when that happens, you know, over time, there should be more of a, what we call a recoupling in a way of those two functions. But if we give them up, and if we sort of, you know, end in despair and say, you know, it's not worth going there because we know that it's an issue, this is just never going to happen. And based on this study, we're able to provide 4 concrete prompts of what we would encourage. So the first one is really embracing qualitative data more. You already see that there's quite a bit of qualitative data, but it often has to do with, you know, especially explaining and rationalizing underperformance. We also think that there should be a tighter coupling between the quantitative and the qualitative in order for them to be able to nourish each other in a way. The second part is we had this point, which I didn't really go into. We had this point about obscurity and opacity of fields, meaning that this phenomenon of the decoupling happens especially in areas which are really difficult to capture. So they're happening less in measuring CO2, for instance, versus measuring biodiversity, because biodiversity is just much harder to capture. They're happening less when it comes to work integration, because you have very clear measures to say, well, the person has a job or doesn't have a job, versus you know, interventions in you know, I don't know, women empowerment or other areas. So basically what we're saying is that, especially finance professionals, but that would also, you know, mean the same thing for social entrepreneurs, I think, because then you can really showcase it. We would encourage tailored hiring practices. So why don't you hire a biologist if you want to measure biodiversity? Or why don't you hire a social worker, a social psychologist if you want to understand you know, psychological processes of empowerment? So meaning that if you want adequate measures, we believe and we see in the data that it would be beneficial to really also tap into the knowledge of experts. The third strategy is disclosing failures. I think this is definitely something that isn't happening enough. We're only talking about you know, the successes and measuring them in quantitative terms, but there's not really a community of practice and learning around this issue of failures, and there's a lot to learn from failures. What was interesting is when we did this research, which was during COVID, you know, and in individual conversations, there was a lot of sharing around, you know, I'm challenged with this, and these are my problems, and I think others are dealing with this in the same way. At least that's what I assume, but I don't really know. And this type of sharing culture around what works and what doesn't, you know, and how do the components need to come together in order to address the systemic nature of problems or not, is I think essential, which brings us to the last point, collective learning. I think the summit is a wonderful opportunity to do that. But really, it's also about not only you know, learning for yourself, which was mentioned earlier as one of the focuses of how you should be doing impact measurement, but also having this exchange about why you would be pursuing certain ways of capturing impact, or why you would be favoring one solution to a social challenge or an environmental challenge over another. So this is really the, as I said, initially the systems perspective, moving from the individual investing to the collective approach to investing, trying to feed in the public, the private, and the community sector in a way, and then engage in a measurement process. So the message really is, you know, with all of the challenges, please don't stop measuring, but at the same time, do it in a way that, you know, it also includes the failures. It also includes rethinking, you know, who you employ in order to do this, and also, you know, the open sharing of, you know, what works, what doesn't, and how can things be improved, right? So these are the 3 frontiers, and not only talking about the challenges themselves, but also hopefully providing some solutions in relation to how we can address them. So I'll stop sharing here, and I'm happy to take any kinds of questions that there might be, being conscious of, I think I kept roughly within my time, but we're a bit advanced in relation to the overall schedule that you had.
Thank you very much, Georgie. It was really inspirational. Like
that's good.
Yeah. And I mean, it also helped me to conceptualize a lot of things that we observe with social entrepreneurs, like that gap between the ideal and actual situation. Like we witness them, but conceptualizing in this way was very interesting for me. So thank you in that sense. I think we can take one or two questions, like if you also have time.
Sure.
I'm turning into the audience, like if there are any questions that you would like to share.
So there's already a remark in relation to the slides, you know, happy for everyone to have them. I sent an earlier version to Sinem already, but I have one where like all of the links are in there as well. So you can just go to the reports, which are all public, I think. If you want to see the paper that I mentioned, which is usually behind a paywall, I can also, I'm just going to send that as well. So you can just share it with all of the participants if you want to.
Yeah, that would be great. I think many people here are interested in that and already see some interest in the chat about it. So if you can share, that will be great, I think.
Yeah, anytime.
I'm turning again. If there's question, we also took your time and like moved a bit past the agenda. So I mean, thank you very much again. Like it was really a great start to the second day and a perfect keynote. It was very nice to have you with us.
Oh, thanks a lot again. It's been a pleasure, and maybe it can serve for inspiration for you to move into the panel discussion. So thanks again for having me, and wishing you the best of luck with the rest of the event. And as I said, I'm happy to share it.
Yeah,
thanks
definitely.
So much,
it's a great start. Thank you, Georgie. Yes, so it has been a great start really to the day, and we will now actually build upon some of the insights that Georgie shared in a panel now that focuses on the investor and startup perspective on IMM and impact investment. We will have 3 panelists with us. Like actually, we had 4, but Can Atacık, because he was traveling, he had some change in the program. He's unable to join, and we have 3 great panelists today with us. Actually, that provides both the investment perspective and startup perspective, and also the intermediary perspective. So it's gonna be an interesting discussion. Berçem, if we can also have our panelists in the spotlight. Yes, Cansu, hello. Our first panelist, Cansu Deniz Bayrak here, she's the Global Director of Tech Partnerships at Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Camilla Wright is with us. Is it the correct pronunciation, Camilla, for this?
Yeah, my name is Camilla Wright, but it was a good guess.
Camilla. Very nice to have you with us. And Camilla is the Senior Associate in Tilia Impact Ventures, which is an impact investment fund that focuses on impact enterprises in the Central European region. And Ulaş Kayır is also with us, co-founder of Espresso, a venture, an impact enterprise that we also work closely with as Impact Hub in Turkey, and we are always happy to do so. So in this way, we provide the different perspectives to the discussion. And first, I want to start with an introduction round, and I want to start with the question about your role and how you have been engaged with impact investment and IMM topics. For each of you, I would like to learn. Camilla, first, I would like to start with you for the introduction round.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. First of all, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, as for the introduction, so I'm representing Tilia Impact Ventures today, which, as you mentioned, is a impact VC fund based in Prague, in the Czech Republic. But we are active in the entire CEE region, which we understand in a way that from the Baltics till the Balkans, plus Austria. And what we're basically doing that we invest in social entrepreneurs in early stage mainly. And you had the question about the role and how it's relating to impact. So actually my role is twofold. So like on the one hand, I'm working on the new deals at our company. So I'm focusing on deal generation, finding the the best founders, and then on deal analysis, so like evaluating all of the relevant projects, putting together proposals, so like helping our team to decide like which one is the investment which is the most relevant for us. So this is one half, let's say. And on the other hand, I'm also the impact ambassador. that's my name within the team, which means that I'm also responsible for many aspects in terms of impact. So I'm responsible for designing our impact framework, designing different types of tools which somehow can help our team to assess the impact of the projects better. I'm also guiding the deep dives into our like focus areas, different impact areas, analyzing the impact results, building relationship with the impact ecosystem players. So like many areas within this impact part.
Thank you, Camilla. Cansu, we can go on with you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for the invite, and lovely to be here this morning. Apologies, London is unseasonably hot and pollens are really bad, so I have a croaky voice for you today. Hi, I'm Cansu. I lead our global tech partnerships at Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. TBI, the easiest way to understand TBI is to think of it as a non-profit government consultancy. So as such, and I'll be very happy to talk about TBI as and when it becomes relevant, I think the lens that I'll be bringing with my TBI hat is the systems change and consequence scanning lens more than direct investment angle. But before TBI, I was an early stage investor specialized in impact and hardware. So horizontal impact, but also B2B and B2C hardware. My last fund was Bethnal Green Ventures. Some of you might have heard of it, Europe's leading tech for good VC. In addition to those, I've also studied impact measurement and management at the University of Oxford, and I taught social entrepreneurship at LSE, Imperial, and Cass Business School as guest lecturer. So, it's a passion area of mine, and I'm very excited to discuss different angles with the audience today.
Thank you very much, Cansu. With Cansu, we also, last time we met was like 10 years ago when we were trying to open the Impact Hub. So
yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember the building works. Like it was literally, there were no walls when I was in Impact Hub the last time. So it's lovely to see old faces and new.
Thank you, Cansu. And Ulash, we would like to go with you.
Thanks, Semi. Thanks for the invite. First of all, we don't get to talk about impact every day, and it's really rare to gather with people that are interested in the impact area. So I'm really happy to be here. My name is Ulash. I'm the co-founder of Wastepresso. So the word impact has been in my life for the past 8 years. I used to work in a startup called Whole Surplus, or aka Fazla, in Turkey. And after that, I did a little bit of startup mentoring, and I mostly focused on startups that dealt with impact. And after that, I co-founded Wastepresso. And Wastepresso, just to briefly explain, we're a material technology company. So we're dealing with coffee grounds, which is originally a waste, and we're using that feedstock to produce sustainable raw materials and sustainable products. Currently, we have some customers and suppliers. We have an active business in Turkey, and hopefully next year we will be aiming to scale our business in EU. So having that said, the concept of the new subject for us, we had some struggles, we have some challenges throughout the journey, but I guess I will talk about them in the previous minutes.
Thank you very much, Ulash. And you said mentorship, and we are grateful for your mentorship support to the also other startups in our network. Always
a pleasure.
So let's start with the first round of question. I will start again with you, Camilla. And first of all, like I want to focus on the investment side and maybe also with some examples from Tilia portfolio. You want to support funders to create systemic environmental and social change, and I'm curious how does your investment philosophy and model support this mission? And each funder have different mission, different impact journeys, and in your work, how do you customize your investment strategies considering those?
Really great questions. Yeah, so I will just start first with the investment philosophy of ours. So I think the important starting point is that we believe in the team that there are still so many social and environmental challenges unsolved out there. So we should find ways how to solve them, and one great way for this is to create scalable mission-driven innovations. And what we are doing is that we trying to create a bridge between those who those people who really fall in love with the problem and they want to solve those. This is the founder side, and then our social entrepreneur side, and then the other side, those people who have the money and who wanna support a good cause. This is the investor side. So we see ourselves as a kind of bridge between them. And how our model works, or how this supports this mission. So basically, we aim to focus on those solutions where the impact is an inbuilt part of the business model. So where those two are strongly together, but the impact is really core. This is one very, very, very important aspect, because this makes it possible that maximizing the impact means maximizing the business means maximizing the impact. So that is one point. We also focus on three key areas: the education, health, and climate. So that's how our model aims to support this impact goal. We're mainly focusing on those founders who somehow coming from the region, but also wanna do something on a global scale, right? Because this is what VC is about. And then we try to support them in many different ways, not just with the financial part. So with strategic guidance, also impact measurement frameworks and impact brainstorming. So many areas. And it's absolutely true that the impact journey, the impact is, I think it's a journey. So it's not true that you can start it in a perfect day from the very beginning, I think. So it's always a journey, and you always learn new things with the founders together. So I see it this way, that you need to sit down with the founders and really understand where the founder is in the journey, and there are similar elements. So we always put together an impact strategy with each of the founders and each of the potential investments. And there are very similar elements, like the problem statement, understanding the value chain, the impact value chain, setting up some measurement metrics. But the content itself is very different, because the companies, as you said, are different. So and it's also interesting that within one vertical, the company's metrics can be different as well. So we aim to not just use standardized approach, but always try to somehow tailor our approach to the need of the company. And maybe the easiest to understand if I'm sharing a few examples. So I chose two, one from the social space and one from the environmental space in our portfolio. The social one called Face Up, and the environmental example is Munch. The social one is a Czech company, and basically the idea here is that the company has created a software solution which is supporting the speak up culture in different organizations. So the idea is that the employees can anonymously speak up and share any issue they saw in terms of in terms of the very strong issues like bullying, corruption, and things like this. And this way, the leadership will have information about that, and they can act on the cases. So the overall impact is basically a healthier culture in organizations. So this is, for example, one example. And the environmental example is Munch. I think it's also a good example. It's basically a Hungarian project. It's a food saving app. So what they are doing that they help the restaurants and retailers to sell their surplus food to people. So it's a B2C business, and basically they can help to them to save it from waste. So the end impact, let's say, is a CO2 saving. And I think these kind of two projects show very well how different the projects can be, and why, for example, for the social one, we measure the number of people who got access to the platform, the number of cases which were reported, the number of cases which were resolved successfully. So these are the kind of key KPIs there. At the same time, for the environmental one, we track the tons of food saved and the CO2 emission equivalent saved. So like you can see, I think from this that it should be in a way always tailored. So it's very diverse, but I think it's great this way.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I mean, it's always great to hear the examples, and in addition to examples, also thank you for sharing some metrics. I think it further makes it even more concrete. Can I also ask you to share on the chat the links for the startups?
Sure,
I think
sure.
it will be
Mm-hmm.
great to
Happy to.
for people who are curious to look into them more. Perfect. And Cansu, I want to continue with you. Actually, like you have many interesting experiences similar to actually Impact Lab in terms of like incubators, accelerators, like you have been in all those organizations like that. But now you make something very different, and like something on policy level, like macro level. We are working with the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, like very interesting career shift. So also, like you can share examples from both. Like I also saw your message, both from previous work and current role. And in this question, also on the role of technology, we can talk, and how can technology help us in developing in managing and measuring our impact better, or scaling our impact better, like with examples that would be even better.
Thank you, Semi. I will try. So, and perhaps, obviously, I'm not here to talk about myself, but it might be useful for the audience. One of the reasons I wanted to make the shift from, in my view at least, from an early stage, relatively small fund, BGV now has 35 AUM, million pounds, if I remember correctly, AUM. It was smaller when I was leaving. To more macro level impact was that because what I've observed when we were trying to, actually measure the ROI, not only, the financial returns, but also the impact returns, because BGV has been operating for almost 15 years now. I just felt that my personal impact footprint would be bigger if I started to work on more specific systems change questions. So what I really want to say is, in the impact ecosystem, there's more than one right answer. Two things can be right at the same time. And also we have multiple different interventions in our toolbox. So actually, in impact measurement and management, whether venture capital is the right financing tool for social companies is a big discussion point. And from my perspective, it is one of the possibilities, but not just the only possibility. So I quite like, at TBI, we are not a funding body, but we work across a lot of funders. So it's been really interesting to see how funders think about impact, how donors think about impact, very, very different from venture capital metrics, where we are imminently looking for, obviously, providing financial returns for LPs. So I guess, maybe it will be useful for me to talk about some of the differences that I observe. I will try to link it to tech. I'm aware of the root of the question, Simi. So the idea is that everyone is looking for the most amount of bang for their buck, effectively. So, but when we're working with donors, what I see is they are a lot more interested in long-term impact, and not all donors operate that way, but I think I can compare donor funding to patient capital more. And when we're looking at venture capital, as you know, like obviously, particularly because my expertise is early stage, like quote unquote inpatient capital, where we want to make our bets and then double down on the companies that show most promise. So pulling back to impact measurement, and I'll talk about particularly the BGV example, because BGV actually is one of the most, like BGV is one of the most developed impact measurement frameworks when you compare early stage venture capitalists in Europe. And as far as I'm aware, we were the very first to start talking about consequence scanning, unintended consequences, as part of our portfolio. So and because BGV model, for those of you who are not familiar, as Semi alluded, it has an accelerator program and then the follow-on fund. So there's the initial accelerator funding, and for the companies that show most promise, they get the follow-on rounds where BGV can lead seed rounds effectively. So by the virtue of having run that program for 15 or maybe even 16 times, a lot of different IMM models for startups were trialed. So, and there was definitely an ambition to try to at least standardize some of it, but I definitely take Camilla's comment here. I agree with that. It is, particularly for early stage, it is extremely hard to talk about impact metrics that can apply across the portfolio. Maybe easier if you're only investing in one area, but in the BGV example, we were investing in sustainability, democracy, health, and a lot more hardware. It's so different when you think about the environmental footprint of a digital product versus an actual physical product, for example. So what we came to was that, okay, we need to really understand the fundamentals of what to look at for founders. So how do we teach how do we learn ourselves, but also teach the founders to define the real actual impact metrics for their own context and for their own stage, because those metrics are necessarily going to change. So what was the role of tech here? I think, and I left before we were trialing this, but how can we use AI to catch patterns was an interesting question here. Again, I don't have direct experience on this, but this is where I see some interesting findings, because there's also in the impact ecosystem, impact investment ecosystem, what I see, which is very encouraging, is it is relatively less competitive than the wider venture ecosystem. What do I mean by that? People are really happy to share learnings, resources, whereas at the end of the day, for venture, we are all competing for the best founders, right? So there's like this competitiveness angle at the back of it. So if we are able to share our data, and then we are able to see similarities or divergences, then we will get one step closer in creating a relatively more templated approach to startup impact. So when I link it back to my current work, what we see a lot is sometimes donors mixing up the use of technology with the impact of technology, which I found interesting, maybe naively. So what do I mean by that? Tech is a means to an end. Tech itself is not the impact that we want to create. Let me give a live example. If a client government comes to us and says, I want to use AI tutors, what I'm hearing is, I want to improve the learning outcomes of my students by using technology. So it's not about only getting an AI tutor live in a country. It's about making sure that all of the supporting environment is there, which includes policy, all of the impact value chain is there, so devices are there, connectivity is there, electricity is there, etc., and that there's longevity. So when I think about how donors look at this, and this is why I call them patient capital, there's been a lot of learnings in the particularly international aid, international development space, where tech interventions, relatively small time scale, period bound tech interventions were funded, like very generously funded, But 5 years, 10 years later, once the intervening body or the tech provider is out of that country, then there's no sustainable long-term impact. So this is what I find really interesting. And this is the key difference I see between my venture capital career and now, I don't know, impact policy career, maybe, which I wouldn't really call it that, but, and I don't think that we should be over indexing on technology here. I think we really need to pull it back to basics and start asking the right questions. I'm aware that Ulaş hasn't had a chance to give his opinion, but I'd be very keen to hear from him as the one who's actually in the trenches and like how they think about this at Vespresso.
Yeah, very, very, very good way to pass to Ulaş. Like, I don't have anything to add there. Thank you very much. Like, very, very, very interesting insights, and I think that's also make Ulaş's answer more interesting from a startup perspective. Ulaş, like, my question was, how has impact measurement and management influenced your processes, and what challenges have you faced or are you facing in integrating it to daily operations? But in addition to that, based on the previous opinions from Camilla and Cansu, if you want to add anything on top of this question to the discussion, also you are welcome to do so.
Yeah, sure. So let me start from the Vespresso side. Well, the concept of impact measurement hasn't been in our agenda from the day one. Well, because we first had to crack some problems, right? We were dealing with the main problem. We were trying to tackle some technical things. We were doing R&D. So first we had to set up this process of collecting coffee grounds and converting them into usable materials and products. So we didn't know about impact measurement, or we were not dealing with it at first. But then we started wondering, is our business really generating an impact? Because we know that saving coffee grounds is a good thing, because they don't dissolve in dumpsters, they don't generate GHG gases. But we also know that our collection operation, our processing operation emits a certain amount of emission. So at that point, because of curiosity, we started evaluating our business in a more holistic approach. But at that point, we had this challenge of not having the right tools and also not having the right know-how, because we were a bunch of guys coming from engineering backgrounds, food, chemical, etc. So we had to get support from outside. So our roads crossed with a startup called 3P Metrics, and with their help, we were able to define and measure each step's emission equivalent. And by doing that, we proved that at the end of the day, we know that at certain processes they're negative in terms of carbon emissions, but at the end of the day, we save carbon emissions by saving coffee grounds and converting them into alternative materials. So that was the first enlightenment stage for us. And the second one was, the companies or the customers also wanted to know about their impacts by working with us, because it's not the only reason, but one of the main reasons that our customers are getting materials or products from us is because that they want to generate impact, right? Because they have sustainability targets, they have an agenda. So in order to do that, we also give them a reporting in terms of the impact that they're generating. So in order to do that, again, by working with 3P Metrics, we designed a tool, a software that enabled us to generate a report for each company, considering the coffee that they're giving, or the amount of material that they're buying. So by doing that, we knew that it's actually we were generating impact and we're sharing with our stakeholders. But still, until that time, we were still not seeing the whole impact of our business. Well, we knew that we were collecting like 3 tons or 4 tons of coffee grounds per month, but we didn't know the emission equivalent for that. As company, we were not talking it between ourselves. So after that, a VC, the first impact VC of Turkey, you may know Founder One, invested in us, and that's how we actually started recording and also knowing the whole impact that we're generating. So it wasn't a necessity for us because we were, constantly dealing with, sales, technical problems, investment opportunities. So thanks to Founder One, we started recording and reporting our whole impact as a startup. And from that day, it has been, one of the key metrics that we're following and reporting.
Perfect. I also have one follow-up question here. Cansu also shared previously, like about in the early stage, it's also really challenging for a startup to measure the impact. And you also mentioned that you didn't have the right skills and you went on the collaboration path, which seems like a very good idea, like with 3P metrics. I'm also asking this question to myself, like frequently, like, is it too much pressure for a startup, particularly at the early stage, in your opinion? And like, does the ecosystem sometimes expect too much from startups in terms of impact measurement? I'm curious about your personal opinion there.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you. So at the early stages, as a startup, it has no solid operations or doesn't have a huge volume, I think it's really challenging to just show something like I'm creating this much impact. But rather than that, I think it's necessary to know at least the theoretical impact a startup would be generating when their product or operations become live. And I think it's not only beneficial, but also a necessity, because when I look at our history as Wastepresso, we just acknowledged it by the time that we had already customers and products. So maybe we would say, okay, we have a solid running business, but we just figured out that our business is not generating positive impact. So that would be a fuck-up scenario. So I think it's really crucial to at least work with a third party or maybe some investors, some accelerators also have some education based on that. Just acknowledge that this business is generating impact, would be generating impact, and after that, once the operations or the product becomes live, you can do frequent tracking at that time.
Yeah, very good point. I totally agree. I think the role of either the investor funds or intermediaries, support organizations become very important at that stage, early stage, where startup also lacks resources or expertise. So very good point. Thank you for that. And in line with that, I'm going to move to you, Camilla. It's very related with my question to you as well. And you also have a very strong focus also on your website about the support you give related with impact measurement and management to the startups in your portfolio. So do you provide how do you provide such support, and how do you see the startups side, and at the time you scout them, for example, at the time you invest, what are the really needs and challenges they have there, and what do you provide as Tilya to those startups?
Yeah, so I think that as an impact fund, it's not just about selecting the impact relevant projects, but it's much more. So it's, I think, at least for us, but I think that's it is for many impact investors, that like in each stages of the investment process, and also like after the investments, the impact is there in a way. So how it works for us is that, of course, when we meet a founder for the first time, there is the kind of first level criteria whether there is an impact there, so whether it can be in scope project for us. So basically what we look for at this stage, that whether it linked to the focus areas of us, and also whether the business model is really linked to the impact, to make sure that these are hand in hand, as I mentioned. And then we go further in the process, we meet the founders, and then the next question is like, how impact intentional is the founder? Because like, as Ulashi said, I totally agree that like in the beginning, it's super difficult to have a kind of perfect KPI setting with measurement ideas. So like in the beginning, it's very often more about, I think, to make sure that the founder has a kind of impact intentionality, because it will make sure that in the future the impact will be important for the founder as well. So like making sure the intentionality is there is essential for us. And then when we go deeper in the project and when the analysis phase is coming, then we try to understand the impact in a broader way. So like we need to better understand how big the impact is, the potential is. So like how scalable it can be, how in-depth it can be, how additional it is. So we very often talk to the clients, the beneficiaries, to understand like what is the actual impact they experience. And also then the question is coming about the measurability, because like we need to be accountable, right? And I think the founder should be accountable as well, because like it's really important. So there are different angles how impact is incorporated in the process. And once we are closer to the decision, then there is always a kind of impact workshop, which I think is a very important support tool for our founders. So how it looks like that we actually sit together and put together an impact strategy. And this is really an iterative process. So it's not like we are telling them like what is the strategy, but like we sitting together, we brainstorming, we trying to understand what we don't understand at the moment. And yeah, as I said, it's a learning journey. So basically, I think that is a very key part of our process to like understand where we stand today. And then once we invested, then we really try to keep talking about the impact with the founder. So we had like examples where, for example, through a product development, we realized that we can have better data to the impact, or the founders learned something from their clients, which made us realize that what is the actual impact. So like the impact measurement and the way how we think about impact is like I think it can be changing throughout the process, and it's good that it is changing, because it means that we learn just more about what's happening in real life regarding impact. Yeah, so I hope I answered the question.
Yes.
But
Yes,
yeah,
very well.
basically
Very well.
that's really how we approach it.
Well, answered very well. I mean, I can like it's very I can see very clearly like also since like you are very considerate of the availability of resources at the stage that you are focusing on in a startup. I think that's very important, and I think that should be the founder perspective, because like working with them hands-on on this topic is very critical. And I haven't shared before, but Tilia Impact Ventures is also interesting for me, because Peter Vitek, co-founder of Impact Hub Prague, is one of the founders of it, and I think we can also see that like he's also very close with entrepreneurs, that entrepreneur-friendly perspective in the ventures philosophy, and you shared it very well. Thank you very much for that. Cansu, I want to move on to you. Maybe in this one we can, like especially your incubator experiences, your experiences with startups, we can delve a bit deeper on that. And in your experience with working with startups, like how have you observed the challenges and opportunities when it's come to implementing IMM? You can comment for both startup and investor perspective as you dealt with both sides. And how can some support programs help in this way? And feel free to be critical about the practice in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my founder journey, it's ancient now, and some of the Turks on the call might be familiar with Süslü Sözlük. So I co-founded that with a uni friend. Looking back, maybe 20 years ago, we could maybe call it a social entrepreneurship experience. When we were doing it, we weren't thinking about it even as a business. And the reason I started here will be obvious in a second. So because Elif and I, so for those of you who are unfamiliar, Süslü Sözlük is effectively a reviews platform for skincare and cosmetics and makeup. And the reason we did that was both Elif and I had problem skin, and we both liked to geek out on like ingredients and products. So we just want to share our knowledge. So it started off as like a forum. And then maybe a few months in, we realized that actually, maybe this is a business. We're dealing with like this really, lucrative and sometimes exploitive, quite frankly, industry. Well, what can we do about it? But we didn't have the terminology to call it an impact startup. We didn't know, whether there were things that we would need to measure. It really mattered to Elif and I that we were helping the community. We were stopping them from buying very hyped up and expensive things that we knew would not work. So I mean, again, like if that came to me as an investor right now, I don't know whether I would take it as an investment opportunity or not. But still, I think it's interesting to start from the ambitions and intentions of the founders here, and Ulaş talked about it a little bit as well. So from the founders side, I think when we are thinking venture capital particularly, and that's one of the reasons why I think venture capital is suitable for only a very limited number of social companies, would love for founders to be very aware that, the growth of the business is equally important, even for impact investors. The growth of the business is equally important as the growth of the impact. So at BGV, what we tried to do was to invest in businesses where we thought as the business grew, the impact would grow. So this could be really straightforward, removal of carbon from the atmosphere because this particular business is, just serving more customers. It could be that there's a very long tail systems change element, which is a lot more harder to measure. So going back to my earlier comment, so during the BGV accelerator, what we really strive to do was to help them understand, what do you want this business to achieve? Do you want to keep working in the venture space? Because then you need to hit venture metrics. And quite frankly, some of BGV portfolio, the majority of BGV portfolio, because BGV invest in what I call pre-seed initially, they go on to have really sustainable businesses, but definitely not venture scale. It doesn't mean that those businesses don't create impact, right? Because more often than not, I shouldn't say more often than not. In some cases, this is because the founder will prioritize impact over aggressive growth. So they will want to have very local, very deep, specialized impact in their region, for example. And they will say, I want to just go deeper in. And this is a live, I'm not going to share which company, but this is an example. It was one of our portfolio companies. They were like, we just want to work in this region of the UK. And obviously, if that's the market that you really want to deeply, genuinely serve, then as a venture capitalist, I don't see the opportunity there anymore. It doesn't mean that this isn't valuable. So I think, I didn't mention, but my venture capital / incubator accelerator life started with Startup Bootcamp, where I ran the Istanbul MENA program with the inimitable Chidem, who's now the GP at Trio based out of Miami in the US. And then I built the IoT program in London, and that's how I relocated to London 10 years ago. And there, what we were really trying to do, looking back again, we weren't talking about impact at all, quite frankly, and it wasn't en vogue as it used to be, maybe like 5 years ago, not as much anymore, unfortunately. But what we were really trying to do is to make sure that the time allocation of the founder is meaningful. So, you know, Semi, how you commented on Camilla's remarks about, you know, being mindful of how labor intensive this could be. I mean, obviously this comes from, I can't speak for Camilla, but from my perspective, there's also a very selfish incentive there. We want the business to grow. We don't want you to just sit down and work on some sort of impact management framework or a theory of change slide or whatever. I'm not entirely sure if that answers your question, but if we have founders in the audience, what I would really recommend is keeping, without getting too caught up in the latest, most popular thing, keeping it extremely simple and tracking your, you know, users and beneficiaries, plus consequence scanning. You heard me say it, I think, the third time in the last 40 minutes now. Unintended consequences are a massive part of earlier stage startup life cycle. And Semi will remember when we were discussing before the panel, I sincerely believe it is a lot more important for early stage companies to do consequence scanning than try to build an impact measurement or management framework with all bells and whistles. So are you trying, in Turkish we say kaş yaparken göz çıkarmak, to take an eye out when you're drawing your eyebrows, Camilla. So are you trying to achieve impacts, but in the meanwhile, are you causing actual harm? So that is literally where I would start, and hopefully that will be a no to that question, and go from there.
Great points. Thank you very much, Cansu. And I'm related question for Ulaş now, and maybe we can delve more into the investment process you had with Funder One, as they're also an impact investment fund. How did that process contribute or to your IMM approach, or how does it shape your impact measurement and management approach? And in general, what role do you think like IMM plays in securing impact investment, and how do you see the investor and industry perspective on the topic affecting your growth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I already mentioned a bit about it. As I said, working with Founder One, they really helped us realize the overall impact of our business. So starting from that point, it was like the constant slide that we have within our pitches, like we're generating this much impact monthly, annually, etc. And also we're projecting our impact will grow over the following years. But sadly, I'm not talking about Founder One. So talking with other investors, even some impact investors, I mean, they're not prioritizing impact, I think, as much as they should be doing. Because, when Cansu was mentioning, the prioritization of impact over aggressive growth, when she said, I imagined them being like 50-50. That's how I imagine when I'm, thinking about impact we see. But, in my experience, the split of that the matrix is just maybe 10% impact, 90% aggressive growth. So that may be because of the region that we're currently operating in. So we haven't expanded into other regions so far. We don't have too many experiences with foreign VCs. We just started seeing them. So within our region, it's not the number one topic, even with impact VCs. And I can also understand it because the world's going through a tough time. Turkey as well. I mean, it's a VUCA environment, but I want to feel like the following investors that we will have in the future will also improve us in terms of IMM. I can also clearly say that including us and other impact startups, it's really rare for a startup to be inspected or for their IMM system to be validated. I think that's also a necessity because we know that we're okay, but I can manipulate that data, I can change it. That has to be made sure that we're actually generating impact, especially right before we go to Series A, because that's when our impact starts scaling aggressively. So I hope that for the following investors that will be a different experience from what we have gone through so far. Cansu, would you like to add something?
Yeah, Cansu.
Yeah, I was raising my hand analogically. So, two things. I was a fundraiser at BGV as well, so there's an element of the funds wanting to, and this is roughly like, again, I think impact in venture capital was at its peak maybe 3-4 years ago. And there was a really strong narrative there that would attract limited partners who are investors in venture capital funds. So there were a lot of quote unquote wannabe impact funds that popped out very quickly, with little understanding of neither venture capital from my perspective nor impact, because there was this golden time of like relatively easy access money, cheaper money, which is not the case anymore. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what was it? It was a startup angle. Oh, obviously, I already mentioned that venture capitalists at the end of the day compete for the best founders. So at BGV, a messaging we used a lot, and I really find it useful, was that we said that it was almost a perfect storm. The entrepreneurs, they're keen to build things that matter, sustainable businesses. The consumers are interested in buying from more sustainable businesses, as long as there is a massive price sensitivity, but that's a whole different thing. And then there's a new transfer of wealth, for generational wealth, from more conservative generation to relatively more open and relatively more interested in impact investment generation, which meant that there was this opportunity for venture capitalists to invest in great businesses that would grow because the consumer appetite was there. And it was relatively easy to fundraise. So I think that affected in the long run the ecosystem. I mean, competition is good, but I think it also made it harder for established impact players to consolidate their funds, grow their AUMs, and made it harder for founders, which went to, just echoing Ulaş's experience, which I know that BGV portfolio, when they went to other quote-unquote impact funds, experienced as well. 10% impact, 90% regular venture capital. So I think it really, diluted the overall impact venture capital message in that sense. But fully recognizing that that is not the ecosystem anymore. And, obviously, most of these funds won't be able to raise their second funds. But because the venture life cycle is roughly a decade, that will only come in the next few years.
Yeah, and also, in Turkey, the number of impact VCs are, increasing. Used to be one, but now we have five or six. I think it's also good to have more examples, and I think we also need more startups that, generate not only positive impact, but also positive outcomes in terms of financials or, success stories like exits. I don't know any impact startup that has exited here in Turkey. So as we have more examples, I think the VC ecosystem will also grow, and the IMM will be, a huge part of the business as it gets more involved.
Definitely. I also added one link from Turkey. John couldn't join today. He was one of our panelists, but like he's leading with a couple of other people, and this is a new impact fund. And I think as we have more and more, it will also develop more here. Like in Turkey, it's just developing. Being mindful of time, like I'm a. Do you have like 5 minutes maybe for one or two questions, or like if 2 minutes?
Yeah, sure. I have.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I can turn to audience. Maybe we can have one question, two questions, like depending. Any questions? Yes, I see. Camila wants to say something.
In the meantime, while the questions are arriving, just a very quick reflection on the previous discussion, that I think it's also like dependent, like how much the impact we see is really focusing on the impact. Like it's also relating to the structure which it is working in. So like, for example, in our fund, like 100% of our carry is linked to the impact of our portfolio. So it means that if the companies in our portfolio don't reach a certain level of impact target, then we need to give the money to a charity to make sure that the impact will happen instead of like taking it as a carry. So I think it's a fantastic way how the funds can tie to the impact. Just a quick note.
Yeah, great example. Thank you.
Very interesting example. Yeah. I would love to.
May I ask a question if no one else? Okay.
Sure.
Well, in the afternoon, we are going to be having a session on access to finance and the decision tree, hopefully that we are working within this project. And there, in my closing remarks, I'm saying that, like, yes, we have like innovative finance tools, but the use is still very rare, and most of the time it's for like big projects like renewable energy, healthcare, education, and so on. Is that the case? And kind of like, do you think this will change in any time soon, that there will be a time where these innovative finance tools will become mainstream? And what is your experience with those? Like the main tools social enterprises are using are still, I guess, bank loans, grants, and so on, right? Could you kind of discuss a little bit on that?
I'll come in very, very quickly. Don't have personal experience in that, but I just put her name in the chat in case you're not already familiar. Oni is an excellent voice for alternative financing in the impact space. Actually, her April Fool's joke was that she was all about VC now. You know, she's a prominent critique of impact venture capital in that sense. I would really recommend following her along. My personal belief is it will, because what I see, what I hope, but also observe is the SME, small and micro enterprises ecosystems are crucial for national prosperity and meaningful GDP growth. What we are seeing is those SMEs are now moving to become more impact SMEs, if that's the right terminology. What means is that now SMEs have more financing tools that they can access, and there will be more impact sustainability appropriate tools that will be applicable for those SMEs. And with that, I'm really sorry, I need to leave, but thank you for having me, and hopefully the rest of the discussions will be fruitful.
Thank you. Can we take a quick photo before you leave?
Yeah.
Like with
Yes,
everyone
let's do
can
that.
turn on the cameras. Can we have all the participants? Semi?
Yeah, for participants who would like to join the photo, like we would like to invite you to also switch on the cameras if it's okay.
Well, that would be great. Yes, if you can turn on the cameras. Thank you very much, all.
Yes, we see more faces.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
So I'll count to 3 then. 1, 1, 2, 3. Could we take it? Perfect.
Thank you.
So, Ulaş, Camila, and Cansu, thank you very, very much for the discussion. I really enjoyed moderating this conversation. It was a great experience for me. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Have a good day.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. So after this panel, we will have a break until 2 p.m. Turkey time and 1 p.m. Central European time. So in 25 minutes, we will be meeting, like we will continue with our sessions, and we will particularly move on to the part where we start to share the key results from the social exchange program and the research. So feel free to stay in the link, and we'll see you back in 25 minutes.